Sarah Parker stood in line at the little bakery on Main Street, clutching her daughter's small hand in hers. The morning air outside had been cold, and her old coat was hardly enough to keep the chill away. Inside the bakery, the warm smell of fresh bread wrapped around her, and her empty stomach twisted painfully. She tried to smile for her daughter's sake, but deep inside, she was trembling. Her little girl, Lily, had big brown eyes and a hopeful face. She kept staring at the shelves stacked with warm loaves, soft rolls, and golden buns. Sarah knew her daughter wanted more than just bread, but Sarah's heart ached because today she could only afford the smallest loaf. She opened her hands slowly, looking down at the few coins she had managed to collect. They were worn and dull, and she had counted them at least 5 times that morning just to be sure. It was all that remained of her money after paying the rent and electricity. She had no idea what tomorrow would bring, but today she was determined that Lily would eat something fresh, something warm. When her turn came, Sarah carefully placed the coins on the wooden counter. She looked at the cashier with nervous eyes, afraid the coins might not be enough. The young man at the counter glanced at the money, then slid a small loaf toward her without a word. Sarah whispered a soft thank you, her voice breaking slightly, and pulled Lily closer to her side. Holding the loaf in her hands felt like holding a treasure. It wasn't much, but to Sarah and Lily, it was everything. She turned toward the door, ready to step outside, when she noticed someone standing behind her in line. It was a tall man in a dark suit. His presence was striking because he seemed so different from everyone else in the small bakery. His shoes were polished, his tie neatly tied, and there was an air of calm confidence around him. He looked like someone who belonged in a tall office building, not in this quiet little shop. What Sarah didn't know was that the man watching her was Michael Anderson, the CEO of one of the largest companies in the city. He had come to the bakery that morning simply because he missed the taste of the bread his grandmother used to buy here. But when he saw Sarah counting her coins with trembling fingers, something inside him paused. He noticed the way her coat was too thin for the weather, how her daughter's shoes were worn at the edges, and how Sarah's smile looked more like a shield than joy. There was a heaviness in her eyes, the kind of heaviness that comes from carrying too much for too long. Sarah gave Lily a small smile, as if to say, "See. We made it. We have bread." She was about to leave when a gentle but steady voice stopped her. "Excuse me," the man said. Sarah froze, unsure if he was speaking to her. Slowly, she turned. Michael Anderson nodded toward the bread in her hands. His expression was calm, but his eyes were kind. "Get more," he said softly. "I'll pay for everything." For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest, and she tightened her hold on the loaf as though someone might take it away. I can't," she whispered. "This is enough." Michael stepped closer, careful not to alarm her. His voice was firm, but there was no judgment in it. "No, it's not enough. Please, let me help." Sarah shook her head quickly. She wasn't used to kindness from strangers, especially not from someone who looked like him, someone who seemed to have everything while she had almost nothing. Her pride told her to walk away, but her daughter's hopeful eyes made her pause. Lily tugged on her mother's coat sleeve. "Mommy," she whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of hunger and excitement, "can we?" Sarah's throat tightened, and tears stung her eyes. She wanted to say yes, she wanted to let her little girl have more than just one loaf, but years of struggle had made her cautious. Accepting help had always come with strings attached in her past, and she didn't want her daughter to learn that the world only gave with conditions. Michael noticed her hesitation. He didn't push further, but his voice grew gentler. It's just bread. Let her eat more than this. Please. The bakery had gone quiet. A few other customers watched in silence, some with sympathy, others with curiosity. Sarah felt the weight of their eyes on her, and it made her cheeks burn with embarrassment. She wanted to disappear, but Lily's hand was still tugging gently at her coat. At that moment, Sarah realized something. It wasn't about her pride anymore, it was about Lily. She couldn't let her child suffer because of her fear. Maybe this was one of those rare moments when kindness was real. She took a shaky breath, her voice barely above a whisper. Thank you. Michael gave a small nod and turned to the cashier. Please, add more loaves, and a few rolls for the little one. Put it on my bill. The cashier quickly wrapped more bread, placing it carefully in a bag. Sarah's hands trembled as she accepted it, still unsure if this was a dream or reality. Lily's eyes sparkled with joy, her smile wide and pure. For the first time in many months, Sarah felt something she thought she had lost hope. Sarah walked out of the bakery holding the bag of bread tightly against her chest. Lily skipped beside her, smiling so brightly that her face seemed to glow with joy. It had been a long time since Sarah had seen her daughter look so happy. For Lily, it wasn't just bread, it was the feeling that someone had cared. But for Sarah, the moment was heavier. She kept replaying the stranger's words in her head, get more. I'll pay for everything. She had never heard such kindness from someone who clearly had no reason to help her. As they walked, Lily couldn't stop talking. Mommy, that man was nice. Did you see? He said we can get more. And he bought me rolls. Look. She peeked into the bag and giggled. Sarah smiled faintly, brushing Lily's hair back from her forehead. Yes, sweetheart. He was kind. But deep inside, Sarah worried. Why would a man like him notice her? She had spent years avoiding attention, keeping her head down, working as many jobs as she could. Life had taught her not to expect help. Yet today, a stranger had changed everything with a few simple words. Michael Anderson, meanwhile, left the bakery and walked toward his car. His driver, James, opened the door for him, but Michael paused. Through the window, he could still see Sarah and Lily walking slowly down the sidewalk. Something about them lingered in his mind. He had built his life around numbers, meetings, and responsibilities. His world was polished, efficient, and always moving forward. But watching that woman count her coins with trembling hands had stirred something in him he hadn't felt in years, a reminder of how fragile life could be. Michael himself had not been born into wealth. He remembered the days when his mother had struggled to feed him, working late shifts just to make sure he had something in his lunchbox for school. Perhaps that was why Sarah's tired eyes had struck him so deeply, they reminded him of his mother's. Inside her small apartment that evening, Sarah prepared dinner for Lily. The bread and rolls filled the room with a comforting smell. She sliced the loaf carefully, placing the largest piece on Lily's plate. Watching her daughter eat with delight made Sarah's heart ache with both joy and sadness. Mommy, Lily said between bites, do you think we'll see that nice man again? Sarah hesitated. I don't know, darling. People like him, they live in a different world from us. But he smiled at us, Lily insisted. He wanted to help. Sarah didn't reply. She was afraid to hope. Hope had often led to disappointment, and she didn't want her daughter to feel that pain. The next morning, Sarah dressed in her plain work clothes. She had a part-time job at a small cafe, and though the pay was little, it kept them afloat. Before leaving, she kissed Lily on the forehead and walked her to school. What she didn't know was that Michael was nearby again. He had asked his driver to pass through that part of the city, as if drawn there without reason. And when he saw Sarah walking Lily to school, he found himself slowing down to watch. She held her daughter's hand with such care, her shoulders bent but her steps steady. "Sir," James said carefully, "do you know her?" Michael shook his head. "No. But I feel like I should." Later that day, Sarah arrived at the cafe. She tied on her apron, tucked her hair behind her ears, and started her shift. The cafe was small, filled with the smell of coffee and pastries. Most of the customers barely noticed her as she moved from table to table, serving quietly. But around noon, the door opened, and Sarah froze. It was him, the man from the bakery. Michael Anderson walked in, his presence filling the little cafe instantly. Sarah's heart raced. She lowered her eyes quickly, hoping he wouldn't recognize her. But Michael did. He gave her a polite smile, the same calm expression he had worn yesterday. "Good afternoon," he said when she came to his table with a menu. Sarah's hands shook slightly as she placed the menu down. "Good afternoon, sir." Michael studied her for a moment. He could see the surprise in her eyes, the nervousness in her posture. But he spoke in a tone that was gentle, not demanding. "I hope your daughter enjoyed the bread yesterday," he said. Sarah's lips parted in shock. She hadn't expected him to remember, let alone mention Lily. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. Finally, she whispered, "She did." "Thank you, again." Michael nodded. "I'm glad." He paused, then added, "You remind me of someone I once knew. Someone who worked very hard for her child." Sarah's chest tightened. She didn't know why he was speaking to her this way, but she could feel the sincerity in his voice. For the rest of the shift, Sarah couldn't stop thinking about him sitting there, calm and composed, yet strangely interested in her life. She didn't understand his world, and she certainly didn't expect to be a part of it. But something told her that this was not the last time their paths would cross. And deep down, though she tried to ignore it, a small spark of hope flickered in her heart. The next few days passed quietly, but Sarah could not shake the memory of Michael Anderson walking into the cafe. She had tried to act calm while serving him, but her heart had been racing the entire time. She couldn't understand why a man of his position, a man who clearly lived in a completely different world, would even notice someone like her. On the other hand, Lily couldn't stop asking questions about the kind stranger. "Mommy," she would say with shining eyes, "do you think he has children too? Do you think he'll come back?" Sarah always answered with a gentle, "I don't know, sweetheart," though she secretly wondered the same thing. Michael, meanwhile, found his thoughts returning again and again to Sarah and Lily. He told himself it was just because they reminded him of his own past, of the difficult days when his mother had sacrificed everything for him. But as time went on, he realized there was something more, something about the strength in Sarah's eyes, even when she was clearly tired, something about the innocence in Lily's smile. One afternoon, Michael's car passed the little school where Lily studied. By chance, he saw Sarah waiting at the gate. She stood quietly among the other parents, holding her worn bag close, her face softening only when she spotted her daughter coming out of the building. Michael watched as Lily ran into her mother's arms, laughing with pure joy. The sight touched him more deeply than he expected. The very next day, Michael returned to the cafe. Sarah was cleaning a table when she saw him walk in. For a moment, she froze again. She felt nervous, uncertain why he kept showing up in the places she happened to be. She didn't want to seem ungrateful, but she also didn't want her life to feel like charity. Michael noticed her hesitation and smiled gently. "Good afternoon," he said as she approached his table. "Good afternoon, sir," she replied softly, placing a glass of water before him. He looked at her kindly. "Please, call me Michael." Sarah hesitated, then nodded. "All right. Michael." They spoke only a little during that visit, but Michael asked simple, genuine questions. "How is your daughter? Does she like school?" Sarah was surprised by his interest. People rarely asked her about her life, most customers treated her as if she were invisible. She answered cautiously, "She likes school. She's a bright child, though sometimes it's hard for her." Michael didn't press for details, but his eyes showed understanding. That evening, after her shift, Sarah found Michael waiting outside the cafe. She stopped in surprise. "Is something wrong?" she asked. "No," he said calmly. "I was just passing by." Then, after a pause, he added, "Would you and your daughter join me for lunch this weekend? Somewhere simple." Sarah's heart skipped. She wanted to say no, to keep her world separate from his. But when she thought of Lily, who had not eaten at a proper restaurant in months, she found herself whispering, "I'll think about it." That weekend, Sarah kept her promise. She dressed Lily in her cleanest dress, and though Sarah's own clothes were plain, she tried her best to look neat. They met Michael at a family restaurant, not a grand place but warm and welcoming. From the moment they sat down, Lily's excitement filled the table. She laughed, asked questions, and even told Michael stories about school. Michael listened with patience, smiling at her every word. Sarah watched in silence at first, her heart tugging as she saw her daughter's joy. Slowly, she allowed herself to relax. Michael was not treating them like charity. He spoke to them with respect, as if they truly mattered. "Lily reminds me of myself at that age," Michael said at one point. "Curious about everything." Sarah's lips curved into a soft smile. "She is all I have. I try to give her the best I can." Michael's eyes grew thoughtful. "You're doing more than enough. She's happy, that's what matters most." For Sarah, those words touched something deep inside. For years she had doubted herself, feared that she was failing her daughter. Hearing someone like Michael say she was doing well gave her a strength she hadn't felt in a long time. When the meal ended, Lily hugged Michael suddenly, without hesitation. "Thank you," she said brightly. "This was the best day." Michael looked at Sarah, almost as if asking permission. Sarah nodded softly, her eyes misty. That night, as Sarah tucked Lily into bed, her daughter whispered, "Mommy, can he be our friend?" Sarah brushed her daughter's hair and kissed her forehead. "Maybe, sweetheart. Maybe." But deep in her heart, Sarah knew that something was beginning to change. What started as a stranger's kindness in a bakery was slowly becoming a connection neither of them had expected. And for the first time in many years, Sarah let herself believe that perhaps her story was not only about struggle, it might also be about hope. The days after their lunch together seemed brighter for Sarah and Lily. Life was still hard, money was still short, and Sarah still worked long hours at the cafe, but something inside her had shifted. It was as if Michael's kindness had left a small light in her heart, a reminder that not every day had to be filled with struggle. Lily, of course, could not stop talking about him. "Mommy, do you think Michael likes chocolate cake? Do you think he has a big house? Do you think he'll come with us to the park one day?" Sarah smiled at her daughter's excitement, though she tried to keep her own heart guarded. "He has his own life, sweetheart. We shouldn't expect too much." But even as she said it, Sarah found herself wondering about him too. Why would a man like Michael, a man who could buy anything he wanted, take such an interest in them? She told herself it was just pity, but a small voice in her heart whispered that it was something more. One Saturday morning, Sarah decided to take Lily to the park. It was their favorite place, a quiet corner with swings, tall trees, and a small lake where ducks floated peacefully. Lily loved to run across the grass, chasing butterflies, her laughter ringing through the air. That morning, as Sarah watched her daughter swing higher and higher, she noticed a familiar figure approaching. It was Michael. He was dressed casually this time, without the suit and tie, and he carried a small paper bag in his hand. "Good morning," he greeted, his voice warm. Sarah blinked in surprise. "Michael, what are you doing here?" He smiled. "I was nearby. Thought I'd take a walk." Then he lifted the bag slightly. "I also brought something for Lily." At the sound of her name, Lily jumped off the swing and ran over. "Michael," she cried happily. He knelt down to her level and handed her the bag. Inside were crayons and a small sketchbook. Her eyes lit up. "For me?" "Yes," Michael said with a smile. "So you can draw whatever you imagine." Lily hugged the sketchbook tightly. "Thank you. I love it." Sarah's eyes softened as she watched the scene. Her daughter's happiness was genuine, and for once, Sarah didn't feel the weight of charity. Michael wasn't trying to make them feel small, he was simply giving from his heart. The three of them spent the morning together. Michael pushed Lily on the swing, helped her feed the ducks, and even sat with her on the grass as she tested her new crayons. Sarah watched quietly, her heart caught between gratitude and fear. At one point, Michael turned to Sarah. "You don't have to look so worried," he said gently. She looked down. "It's just. I don't understand why you're doing this. You don't even know us." Michael was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke softly. "When I was young, my mother worked 3 jobs. She struggled every day to raise me. I remember her counting coins for food, just like you did that day in the bakery. If it weren't for a few kind people who helped us when we needed it most, I don't know where I'd be now." Sarah's breath caught. His words felt real, sincere. He wasn't helping out of pity, he was helping because he understood. "I'm not here to interfere in your life," Michael continued. "But if I can make things a little easier for you and Lily, I'd like to." Sarah's throat tightened. For years she had carried the burden alone, never letting anyone in. But now, hearing his words, she felt something inside her begin to soften. Over the following weeks, Michael slowly became a part of their small world. He would sometimes stop by the cafe, not for business, but just to have a coffee and exchange a few words with Sarah. Other times, he would meet them at the park or walk with them after school. Lily adored him. She would run to him with open arms, showing him her drawings or telling him about her day. Michael always listened patiently, never once looking distracted. For Sarah, it was harder. She found herself smiling more, laughing at times she hadn't laughed in years. But in the quiet moments, when she was alone, doubt returned. Could she really trust him? Was it safe to let him into their lives? One evening, as she tucked Lily into bed, her daughter whispered, "Mommy, Michael feels like family." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She kissed her daughter's forehead and whispered back, "Maybe one day, sweetheart. Maybe." But in her heart, she knew the truth. Michael was no longer just a stranger who had bought them bread. He was slowly becoming something more: a friend, a protector, and perhaps the answer to the hope she had almost forgotten she could feel. The bond between Sarah, Lily, and Michael grew slowly but gently. Days turned into weeks, and Michael's presence began to feel natural in their lives. He never forced his way in, never demanded more than Sarah was ready to give. He was simply there, offering kindness, patience, and quiet support. Lily adored him more with each passing day. She would rush out of school with excitement if she saw him waiting near the gate. She drew pictures of him in her sketchbook, placing him beside herself and her mother, smiling under the same sun. For Sarah, however, things were not so simple. She liked Michael's company, his calm voice, his gentle eyes, the way he treated her daughter with respect. But every time she allowed herself to feel comfortable, a wall of fear rose inside her heart. One night, after finishing her shift at the cafe, Sarah sat by the window of her small apartment. The city lights flickered in the distance, and Lily slept peacefully in the next room. Sarah's hands wrapped around a cup of tea as her mind wrestled with itself. What if this doesn't last? She thought. What if he disappears one day, and Lily's heart breaks? What if mine does too? She had built her life around survival, not dreams. Trusting someone, especially someone like Michael, who belonged to a world so different from hers, felt dangerous. The following weekend, Michael invited them to visit a small bookstore downtown. It wasn't a fancy place, but it was warm and filled with the smell of old paper and fresh coffee. Lily ran from shelf to shelf, her little fingers tracing the spines of colorful books. Michael followed her patiently, answering her endless questions. Sarah watched from a distance, her heart torn between joy and worry. At one point, Michael picked up a children's book and knelt down beside Lily. "Do you like this one?" he asked. Lily nodded eagerly. "Can I have it?" Sarah quickly stepped forward. "No, Lily. We can't." Before she could finish, Michael smiled softly. "It's just a book, Sarah. Let her have it." Sarah froze, her heart pounding. It wasn't about the book. It was about what it meant to let someone else provide for her child. She opened her mouth to protest, but then she saw Lily's hopeful eyes. Her shoulders sagged. "All right," she whispered. Michael handed the book to Lily, who hugged it tightly as if it were the greatest gift in the world. Afterward, the three of them sat at a small table in the corner of the bookstore cafe. Lily flipped through her new book, her laughter filling the space. Michael looked at Sarah quietly. "I didn't mean to upset you," he said gently. Sarah lowered her gaze. "It's not that. I've never had anyone help like this before. I don't know how to accept it." Michael leaned back, his expression thoughtful. "I understand. But please know I'm not here to take over your life. I'm only here because I care. That's all." His words sank deep into her heart. For a long moment, Sarah didn't speak. Then she whispered, "It's hard for me to trust. I've learned that when people offer help, there's always a cost." Michael's eyes softened. "Not always. Sometimes people help simply because they remember what it feels like to struggle." Their eyes met, and for the first time, Sarah allowed herself to see him not as a wealthy man or a stranger, but as someone who understood pain. Later that evening, after Michael dropped them off, Sarah sat beside Lily's bed. Her daughter was clutching the new book to her chest, already half asleep with a smile on her face. "Mommy," Lily murmured drowsily, "Michael makes us feel safe." Sarah brushed a hand over her daughter's hair. Her throat tightened. "I know, sweetheart. I know." She stayed there for a long time, watching Lily sleep. And though fear still lived in her heart, another feeling was beginning to grow stronger: hope. The next week, Sarah faced another challenge at work. The cafe owner announced that business was slowing down, and some shifts would be cut. When Sarah heard her hours would be reduced, panic rose in her chest. Less work meant less money, and less money meant harder days ahead. That evening, she tried to hide her worry from Lily, but Michael noticed when he saw her at the park the next day. "You look troubled," he said gently. Sarah tried to brush it off. "It's nothing. Just work." Michael didn't press, but his eyes showed concern. "If you ever need anything, please, tell me." Sarah shook her head firmly. "I can manage." But deep down, she wasn't sure. The fear of losing control battled with the comfort of his presence. She didn't want to depend on him, yet she couldn't deny the way his kindness steadied her heart. That night, Sarah lay awake long after Lily had fallen asleep. She thought about the bakery, the park, the bookstore, and the countless little moments when Michael had made their lives lighter. Maybe trust doesn't have to mean weakness, she thought slowly. Maybe it can mean allowing someone to stand beside you, even when you're afraid. The thought frightened her. But for the first time in many years, it also gave her peace. The air in Sarah's small apartment felt heavy that evening. She sat at the kitchen table with bills spread in front of her, the dim lamp flickering slightly. Her hours at the cafe had been cut again, and the numbers no longer balanced. Rent, electricity, food. No matter how many times she added and subtracted, the truth was clear. She couldn't cover it all. Lily was drawing happily in her sketchbook on the floor, humming a tune she had learned in school. Sarah forced a smile whenever her daughter looked up, but the moment Lily's eyes returned to her drawing, the smile faded. She thought of Michael. He had offered help before. She could almost hear his voice in her memory: "If you ever need anything, please, tell me." But pride and fear held her back. She didn't want to be seen as someone waiting for rescue. She wanted to stand on her own, to prove to her daughter that strength was possible even in struggle. A few days later, Sarah's landlord knocked on the door. His voice was not unkind, but firm. "Sarah, I can't wait much longer. Rent is due." Her heart sank. She nodded quickly, promising, "I'll find a way." But when he left, her hands trembled. Finding a way felt harder with each passing day. That evening at the park, Michael noticed her silence. Lily was running across the grass, chasing a butterfly, but Sarah sat stiffly on the bench, her face pale. "You're carrying something," Michael said quietly, sitting beside her. Sarah shook her head. "It's nothing." But he waited patiently, saying nothing more. His calm presence pressed against her walls until finally, she whispered, "I might lose the apartment." Michael turned to her, his eyes steady. "How much?" Her throat tightened. "It doesn't matter." "I can't, Sarah," he interrupted gently. "How much?" When she finally told him, he didn't flinch. Instead, he nodded slowly. "I'll take care of it." Sarah's eyes widened. "No, I can't let you." "Why not?" His tone was still calm, but there was a firmness in it. Sarah, this isn't charity. It's kindness. And kindness isn't a debt, it's a gift. Her eyes stung with tears. I don't want Lily to grow up thinking we survive only because of someone else. Michael leaned closer, his voice soft but strong. She won't. She'll grow up knowing her mother fought every day for her. And she'll also learn that sometimes, it's all right to let others help when life is too heavy. Sarah lowered her head, silent. His words sank into her heart, breaking through the fear little by little. The next week, the situation grew harder. Sarah returned home from the cafe to find a notice slipped under her door, an official warning about late rent. She held the paper in her hand, her chest tight with panic. That night, she tucked Lily into bed and sat quietly by the window, tears slipping down her cheeks. She had tried so hard, but life kept pushing her down. For a moment, she allowed herself to whisper into the dark, maybe I can't do this alone. The following day, Michael appeared at the cafe. Sarah tried to hide her tired face behind a polite smile, but Michael saw through it instantly. After she brought him coffee, he spoke gently. I've taken care of the rent, he said simply. Sarah froze. What? You can't, it's done, Michael replied. And before you argue, listen. I didn't do this to take away your strength. I did it so you and Lily can have peace tonight, so she can sleep without fear, and so you can breathe without the weight crushing you. Tears filled Sarah's eyes. She wanted to protest, but her voice broke. I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to, Michael said softly. Seeing you both safe is enough. That evening, Sarah walked home with Lily. For the first time in weeks, her steps felt lighter. She didn't have to worry about being thrown out, at least not now. Lily noticed her mother's calmer face. Mommy, you're smiling, she said happily. Sarah hugged her tightly. Yes, sweetheart. We're okay. Later that night, when Sarah was alone, she thought about everything. She remembered the bakery, the bread, the way this man had stepped into her life without warning. He had gone from being a stranger to being someone she now trusted with her deepest fears. She realized something important: Michael wasn't just helping with money. He was giving them something far more precious: stability, dignity, and hope. Her heart softened, and though fear still lingered, she whispered into the quiet night, maybe we don't have to walk alone anymore. The first rays of sunlight spilled through the small kitchen window as Sarah made breakfast. For the first time in a long while, she felt a quiet peace settle over her. Lily hummed beside her, helping pour cereal into bowls. Their apartment, though still modest, no longer carried the oppressive weight of fear. It had been weeks since Michael had stepped in to help with the rent, and life had slowly begun to feel lighter. But more importantly, Sarah felt a shift within herself. She realized that accepting help did not make her weak, it allowed her to protect her daughter more fully and to open her heart to hope again. That morning, Sarah walked Lily to school as usual. On the corner, she noticed Michael waiting. He waved, his familiar warm smile lighting up his face. Good morning, he called. Sarah returned the greeting, her lips curving into a small, genuine smile. She felt comfortable now, not afraid of his presence, and that made her chest feel lighter. Can we walk together today? Michael asked. Sarah nodded. Of course. As they walked, Michael chatted with Lily about her favorite subjects at school. She told him stories of her friends, her lessons, and her dreams. Sarah listened quietly, feeling a sense of gratitude she couldn't fully express. Later that day, Michael invited them to a small community event in the city park. There were games, music, and families everywhere. Lily's eyes sparkled with excitement as she ran toward the balloons and performers. Sarah followed slowly, holding Michael's arm lightly, feeling a newfound trust. She realized that his presence was not an intrusion, it was support. Someone who cared for her daughter's happiness and her own peace of mind. At one point, Lily tugged at Sarah's hand. "Mommy, look. Michael wants to join the sack race." Sarah laughed softly. "I guess he does, sweetie." Michael joined Lily, hopping and laughing, clearly out of practice but fully immersed in the moment. Sarah watched, her heart swelling. Here was a man who could live in a world of luxury and power, yet he chose to spend his time simply making a little girl happy. After the event, they walked to a small cafe nearby. Lily fell asleep in Sarah's arms on the bench outside, exhausted but smiling. Michael watched her quietly. "You know," he said softly, "she has the brightest heart. And you've done everything right by her. Never doubt that." Sarah looked at him, her eyes filling with tears. "I've been afraid for so long, afraid to trust anyone. Afraid that everything could fall apart." Michael reached out and gently held her hand. "Sometimes life surprises us. And sometimes, letting someone in doesn't take away your strength, it multiplies it. You've been strong all along, Sarah. You just needed to see that it's okay to share the load." Her chest tightened with emotion. She had carried so much alone for so long, and now, finally, she felt the weight ease slightly. She realized she could allow hope to live in her life again. That evening, Michael invited them to his home, not the grandeur of a mansion, but a warm, welcoming place with cozy furniture, books on shelves, and photographs of family and friends. Lily explored, delighted by the little details, while Sarah observed quietly. Michael noticed her gaze. "I want you both to feel comfortable here. It's not about wealth or status, it's about family, in whatever way we can make it." Sarah smiled softly. "Thank you, for everything. For your kindness, for trusting me to be myself." Michael nodded. "It's not me you need to thank. It's life giving you a second chance to feel safe, to dream a little. You've earned it, Sarah. And Lily has earned it too." As they drove home later, Lily fell asleep in the back seat, clutching her sketchbook and smiling in her sleep. Sarah looked at Michael, her heart full. "I think we're ready for a new beginning," she whispered. Michael smiled gently. "Yes, we are." The world outside the car window seemed to shine a little brighter. For the first time in years, Sarah allowed herself to believe that life could be good not just for a moment, but for a long time. She had learned that kindness could arrive in the most unexpected forms, that strangers could become friends, and that letting someone into her life did not mean losing herself. And as they drove home together, Sarah realized something else: she no longer had to face the struggles alone. With Michael's support, and her own courage, she and Lily could step forward into a future filled with hope, laughter, and the simple joys that once seemed impossible. For Sarah, it was the beginning of a life where worry did not rule every moment, where love and trust could grow, and where a single loaf of bread had turned into a life-changing gift of hope and connection.